87% of realtors that get into the business get out of the business after 2 years. That does not exist in our world.
We have massive visions around growing our businesses, and we are always looking to add talent to our world. We do everything in our power to ensure the people we surround ourselves with defy the odds, get into production, and build massive lives for themselves.
We have interviewed some of the top realtors in the world. If you're a new realtor, a top producer, or CEO of a mega team, Sales Beast Podcast is your blueprint for success.
With locations all across Canada, reach out to us to talk about partnership and opportunities. We are looking forward to it.
Yes, I'm the boss.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Sales Beast Podcast. I am super excited today to have Scott Benson. Anyone local to my market, I imagine you would be seeing this guy a little bit more frequently. Scott, maybe in the last 6 months or so, I see your face absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, we're trying hard, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, prior to that, I would see a lot of you in Burlington, Oakville, but never in Hamilton. I actually see I live in Kirkendale, so I see a lot of your for sale signs popping up there. Started noticing them this year, so good for you. You have the most beautiful signs in the industry and the coolest sunglasses.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all that.
Yeah, so you're someone we recently did a deal together. Someone I've been looking up to really since I got in the business. I knew who you were. You've done over $1 billion in sales. You're a huge deal in our marketplace. What I don't know about you is how you got started. So I knew you as who you are today. What I learned from your bio, you haven't been doing this all that long, only 13 years. How did you get started? When did you get started? And how have you blown up so quickly?
Yeah, so I actually started selling online advertising, and I was selling Google advertising. So, for a product that we're all familiar with would be pay-per-click. And I was selling pay-per-click advertising, and I met with this very young realtor. We were the same age. I think I was 25, 26, and he was around the same age. And all of a sudden, he called me up. I showed him the products, and I basically built a microsite for him. Or I didn't build it myself, but our back-end team built it. And we started basically paying for ads. And he was spending at the time $2,500 a month. And then he came back to me after 2 months. He's like, Scott, my phone's ringing off the hook. Like, double the spend. I was like, what? You're 25, 26 years old. You're spending $5,000 a month, which was a massive amount of money to me, right? Like, I hadn't cracked 6 figures in my life as an annual income yet. I'm just kind of looking at things going, wow, this guy must be making like 200, 300,000. He's spending just 60,000 a year on Google pay-per-click. Like, what else is he spending? So it was in that moment that I realized, like, I'm telling this guy exactly what to do, and he's building a fairly decent size business. And he was a Toronto agent. I still know him, great guy. And it was in that moment where I was like, I'm going to get my real estate license. I'm going to start doing exactly what I'm telling other realtors to do. And that was the start. And I remember the first microsite I built, I went after kind of niche keywords, sort of lower volume, but very, very specific. And I would build the URL around the keyword. And then all of a sudden I would just, rank organically and also pay for clicks. And the phone started to ring. And in that moment, it was so overwhelming in the beginning. Now, this was 13 years ago, right? So think about 13 years ago, who was doing pay-per-click advertising? Very new product. And so I grabbed my best man for my wedding. I grabbed my wife's cousin. Like, we just started growing very, very organically with the people that were around us because the revenue was there.
That is not a story I'm used to. I've never heard that one before as a way to get started. So essentially, we've used different lead generation companies before. We looked into Agent Locator, never used it. The one we used for the longest period of time was Sync. What you're doing is essentially what Sync does. I assume just at a far lower cost because you're doing it yourself versus going to someone like Sync and paying $10 a lead.
Yeah, and I would say our average cost per click still is around $3 a click.
Okay.
And I don't manage the campaigns myself. In the beginning, I hired a campaign manager, but like an independent guy, not one of these bigger companies, because the bigger companies, in my experience, like they eat away so much of your spend on management fees. I wanted somebody that was going to charge me a flat fee per month, like, charge me $200 a month. A lot of it, if you know that world of internet advertising, is kind of a set it and forget it. So you set up the ads. They're called ad groups. They're like buckets of keywords. You set them up and you hit go, and then Google actually automatically pauses ineffective keywords. They'll re-rank you on keywords that are really effective through their score, which is called a CTR score, click-through rate. And essentially, we then built out a pretty good, I would say, a pretty good campaign, pretty good program. We're spending over $100,000 a year, probably by year 3, and we just that most of them were listing leads, and we would just kind of go after one after another, and we just kind of ran in that direction. The interesting thing, though, for us was that everybody jumped on that bandwagon by year 3, and so our microsites were still effective, but the competition was significant. And then Google Places came in, which is the business listings, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That became even a higher priority than the pay-per-click, sponsored ads on top. You could actually now get your organic ranking in A, B, C, D, F, G, and then obviously they later introduced sponsored ads on the A, B, C, D as well on the Google Places or Google Business Listings. So it was and it still is, such a quickly evolving space that we got really, really exhausted, I would say, with the level of competition. And we moved very quickly into kind of a big brand style marketing approach. And that's where we went into, buses and bus shelters and billboards. And we still have a very active flyer campaign. So we've tried it all. I think we've tried most things, except for before this podcast mentioning to our CRM side of things as a weakness, and it's something that we need to expand on. But yeah, outside of that, if you can name a type of advertising, we tried it. Different websites, we tried third party, but pay-per-click was really how we got started.
I love it. I grew up in Oakville, and I think my first ever introduction to you was definitely on the buses in Oakville, always like riding around town, which is amazing. And actually your team sold my mother and father-in-law's house. So
no way. That's amazing. I love to hear that.
Yeah, it's
I asked before, you guys crushed it. They're very happy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's great. No, that's great feedback. I love to hear that. Of course, we didn't get you in, so what happened there?
Well, we'll
tell Mike. I'll call you after the podcast. No, I'm just kidding. No, but yeah, it was. I think most people that get started, like at least in my experience, to grow a healthy team, there has to be an overflow of opportunities, right? Like that's naturally when things should grow. If you're trying to grow without the opportunities, like there's always going to be a stunt in the growth because the people that you're building with don't have the opportunities to grow. And that doesn't mean necessarily like, perfect listing leads all the time, but it means that there's coaching and training, there's a back end office, there's value. They see value. And for us, it just happened to be leads. And so we were able to grow very, very quickly in a short amount of time. And then, of course, when you're getting listing leads, a lot of buyer leads come from those listings. And so then there was kind of a buyer pool of leads that needed to be supported. And so we grew again. And then when, Mike was mentioning the outdoor media that we started to do, like it was fairly new at that time. There was the odd bus and there was the odd back of a bus shelter here or there. But when we did it, we kind of went all in. And we I think our first spend, we bought 52 buses and 120 billboards. Don't quote me on that, but something like that. And at that time, that was a very big spend. And immediately we started and it was actually Burlington that we did that bigger spend in on the outdoor media, because Oakville had buses, but Oakville only has 2 active billboards. I don't know if you guys know that, but literally in all of Oakville, there's 2 active billboards, one downtown and one Dundas and Nayagawa, I think. But in Burlington, there's, I don't know how many, maybe 100, maybe more. There's about 300 bus shelters. And so we were able to actually gobble up more ad space in those areas. And that was kind of when we went to the next level, I would say. And we were able to go from, we had a team of maybe 3, 4, 5, and all of a sudden we got to sort of 12, 13, 14. And from there, we just kept on pushing and pushing. And then we went out, like Mike intimated, into Hamilton. We've done a little bit of Niagara, Brant County, Cambridge, and we've gotten as high as 40 agents, but now back down to, I think, around 22, 23. And that's just a result of the markets, right? So when the market's slow and volumes go down, naturally people leave the industry or look for opportunities elsewhere. And that's just part and parcel of our business. I think it was a great broker owner that said, the commodities in real estate, meaning agents, they have 2 feet. Like they get to go wherever they want. And that's a good thing, right? We want everybody to go where they feel the best opportunities are. But anyways, that's a little bit about kind of how we got to here.
I love what you said at the beginning around like being able to provide opportunities and having a big enough world to provide for your agents so that they can grow whatever business they want within that. And I always refer back to John Maxwell's law of the lid. Your business, your life will only grow to the extent that you do. So I wanted to ask you, well, first question, like what do you do to continue to develop your skills and stay on top of, what's going on in the ad space, or what are some of the best campaigns to do to market and make sure that your team gets the most exposure?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that a lot of conferences, and I don't tend to go to them in person, but I'll watch a lot of them either on recording or the odd live conference. I'll sort of tune into. For us, also, we plugged into a brokerage that is international. I feel like an old dog in the industry just because I'm older than 40. But like, there's a lot of 20-year-olds out there right now that are doing things that are phenomenal, fascinating, and essentially we look to kind of the I would say the younger agents that are coming into the market because they're doing things that are interesting. For example, this podcast. I mean, this is something that offers value to agents and consumers alike. And you guys are spending your time and your energy and your resources on setting up something that provides value. And this is something we're not doing. And so we look at that and we go, okay, maybe this is an avenue that we should go down. And so Mike and I were talking before this podcast, but the way the industry is set up right now, it is forcing us, and it's a good thing. It's forcing teams, top producing agents, to actually walk shoulder to shoulder and share best practices and figure out what's working because it's changing so quickly. Right now, someone might have a lead gen that's doing phenomenally well on Facebook. Well, wait like 3 months and maybe there's going to be a new social media platform that's all of a sudden come into the purview that's totally different. And whoever jumps on that is going to see major profitability. And so essentially what I see is that the consumer, they want everything, right? Like they want their house listed everywhere. They, and rightly so, like they want to have opportunities to get buyers in kind of a 360-degree solution. If it's social media, if it's print media, if it's, online websites, if it's DDF feeds, you name it, they want to attract that consumer, or at least if they knew about it, they would want to. And that's a lot of hats that we didn't have to wear before. Before there was a lot of people, even 5 years ago, they'd go hammer in their own sign.
You were talking about how you're try your best to learn from newer agents that maybe haven't been in the business as long as you, but they're trying new and innovative things. Anna and I were discussing. So I had a phone call with a friend of mine, Chris Knighton, this morning. If you drive through Hamilton in the last 2 months or so, I would say you see his face everywhere. I was asking him some questions and he hasn't been running billboards as long as you, so he didn't have the answers. The value in billboards, is it that you're sourcing leads through these billboards, or is it that you have credibility when you actually sit down with the seller? If I was to go spend 20 grand per month on billboards, can I expect the phone to ring?
Well, I would say it will be hard to tell why the phone is ringing because with internet leads, it's very trackable, right? So, Google Analytics or whatever software you're using will tell you how long someone's been on the website, where did they click, how many pages did they visit. There's, a lot of information you can get with impressions, unique visitors, and the tracking of that. I don't know if you guys use iGuide, but iGuide is another great tool to see where the traffic came from when it went to the actual listing itself or the iGuide website. And did it come from realtor.ca? Did it come from scottbensonteam.ca? Did it come from, a third-party website, etc.? With billboards, bus shelters, buses, it's really difficult to figure out like where did they actually find you? And because oftentimes it will land on the website, right? So the lead comes in and it looks like a website lead, but is it because you had 20 billboards out there that they went to your website? Was it because of a Google pay-per-click that they went to your website? That's the difficulty in outdoor media. And I would just break it down this way. And this was told to me when I started my career. Essentially, all advertising breaks down into two buckets. You have directive and you have creative. Directive advertising is where people are looking for you. Creative advertising is where you are looking for them. And so for us, we started our business with directive advertising. We wanted to spend the money where people were looking for us. So for example, if someone goes online and types in, you know, Realtor Hamilton or Best Realtor Burlington or whatever they type in, top real estate brokerage, Oakville, whatever that keyword is, they're looking for you. They're looking for us. And if you're paying to position yourself where they're searching, it's very directive. And assuming your website matches up with their keyword search, it will connect and a lead will be generated. And so we started with directive advertising. Now, creative is us going after the client or us looking for the client. For example, flyers would be very creative style advertising. You're going into their mailbox, asking them to call you for a home evaluation, or you're sending them a market report, hoping that that will provide value and they will connect with you on their listing. I think it's a Gary Keller statement, kind of a nod to Keller Williams, is he always said, lead with revenue. Don't go and blast a bunch of creative advertising hoping the phone will ring. Lead with revenue, lead with go out there and get some clients and start with directive advertising means. And from there, if there's excess revenue left over, then go into some creative spaces and try and build the brand up that way. That'd be my suggestion.
Appreciate that. One of the other things that Mike and I were debating on, and maybe you can give us some insight into this, is how direct do you have to be when you are doing more of like the creative stuff? Like how do you guys position calls to action? Are you the one directing that, or do you have a team that really focuses on the right keywords to have people, connect with you?
Yeah, so I would say if it's keywords, we're talking online. So are you actually just meaning like the phrasing that we're putting in the outdoor blasts?
More of the phrasing, like what kind of call to action, what kind of offering are you putting out there that's going to elicit people to see a billboard, see a bus, see a marketing flyer, and call you guys or reach out to you?
Yeah, so I would say it's really important to develop a brand around who you are or who the ethos of the team is. You see a lot of advertising in our space right now that's like, if I can't sell your house, I'll buy it, guaranteed, guaranteed. Especially in kind of the Hamilton, Niagara region. And that's not our ethos. Like, that's just not who we are. It's not our style. Nothing against it, but it's just not who we are. So we built our messaging around who we are, which is, straightforward, no nonsense real estate done the right way. You'll see sold signs everywhere as part of our messaging because we basically go from Oakville to Niagara, Hamilton, Cambridge, Brant County. So that was really the messaging behind that. And we try to have more of a, I would say, I don't know if humble is the right word for a real estate advertising program, because it is very boastful in many ways, and we are kind of advertising ourselves in a lot of cases. But from a like who we are perspective, we have a motto that is work hard, be kind, stay humble. And so behind the advertising, that's who people should meet. Like, they should meet people on our team, or hopefully myself, and say, this guy works hard. There's a kindness to the team, and they're not, coming in thinking that they're the bee's knees and like everybody needs to use them and they're the best around. We come at it from a approach of like, look, we think we're really, really good at real estate. We'd love to sell your house. We'd love to give us the opportunity to show you that we provide value, we have a great marketing program, but we're also going to show customer service and a love for our clients that hopefully is unparalleled. And that is really difficult to say on a billboard, right? So it's like, how do you take all of that, which was 2 minutes of talking points, and actually put that on a billboard? And for us, that's kind of where we start, is like, okay, here's our presentation in a 2-minute script. Now, what do we want to say in a short billboard phrase? And then you'll often see our billboards will say, work hard, be kind, stay humble. Or you'll see a billboard that might say sold signs everywhere. You'll see a flyer that might say no nonsense, or straightforward, no nonsense real estate. That's what we're trying to say, is if you feel a tendency to glean towards the guaranteed, if I can't sell it, I'll buy it. If that is more, the consumer's style of choice, that's probably not a good fit for our team. If your style as a consumer is like, no, I want a genuine approach, I want somebody who's going to be a great marketer and get the home sold for top dollar, but have a just more of a pragmatic and straightforward conversation with people, then we are probably a good fit for those clientele. And we've built a wonderful clientele with amazing people. But yeah, it's specific to kind of who you match up with, who you are. I think a lot of the times in business, if you're a real estate investor and you're doing triplexes and multiplexes, and that's kind of your knowledge, you're going to match up with other investors in the marketplace. And I think the same goes for personality and the ethos of the team.
Yeah, I think the whole concept of you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are stands out to me right now. You're putting who you are personally and also who the team is out there and making cohesive branding across the board. And then therefore you're attracting the people that you want to do business with, not necessarily the people that aren't going to align with your values.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think that you've got a lot of wisdom and kind of you've read a lot of books, I can tell. So yeah, or have yeah, or have life experience. But and that's also true for the growth of the team too, right? Like if you look around in that team, in my experience in life, culture comes from the top down. You want to know what the culture is at a school, you go meet with the principal. You want to know what the culture is at a home, you go meet with the parents. The culture is coming, generally speaking, from the top down, and I think that that's just a natural way to grow, and it's a natural way to gain clientele.
On that note specifically, we have similar-ish team sizes. What do you do typically, whether it be day to day, month by month, to instill the culture within your team and then also to cultivate it?
Yeah, so it's a good question. We've done everything from just going bowling together to having lunch at Spencer's at the waterfront. We do regular team meetings. We have online coaching and training, which would be done virtually every second week. We, I mean, a lot of us are friends, right? So there'll be just, hey, you want to grab a coffee, or I'm having a rough week, can I give you a shout? A lot of that I think supports the culture, and then also I've learned that the top producing agents in the team will either add to or take away from the culture, right? So if you have people that are super individualistic, and it's a team, and that the model is a team model, that will take away from the actual team. And so personality profile tests are important. I would say not. I wouldn't say that they're gospel truth on kind of you have to look at a personality profile, but I would say that personality profiles can be good indicators of if somebody is a good fit for a team model. And then outside of that, I think that you just treat people well. I think that is it should go without saying, but I feel like it still needs to be said. Just treat people well, offer some room for forgiveness when someone's a little bit offside, or if I'm offside, I want the same forgiveness in return. Like these are just basic sort of human principles that I think get overlooked sometimes in business, because all too often people are looking at like the bottom line, or they're looking at spreadsheets instead of looking at the heart, or looking at someone in the eyes and being like, okay, how are you today? What's going on? That stuff is important.
Was there, I didn't even live in Ontario when you got in the business. I was a baby at that time, but I think I've made it pretty clear to you. Here's my situation. I've always looked up to people. When I was a kid, I was a hockey player. Where I grew up, there was no NHL team. It was a major junior team. I'd be the little guy waiting for autographs. My goal was to go to the NHL. That didn't happen. So here I am. When I got in this business, I did the exact same thing. So I drive down the streets and see the Golfy sign. I want to be like Golfy in the future. And I try and figure out how he got to where he got to. And same thing with you or Chris Knight and pretty much anyone that's anyone in the city. I would do that. When you got into business 13 years ago, was there a blueprint like I had? Did the big teams exist? And was there anyone you looked up to and maybe had the ability to build a relationship with to give yourself some guidance?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think I did the same thing. And I think that it's usually the big brands that we kind of look to when we're brand new in the industry. So I started in Oakville. Dan Cooper was a bigger brand at the time. And certainly, I remember thinking like, okay, I got to figure out who made his website. I've got to figure out who makes his flyers. I've got to figure out because he must be using the best people. Who's his photographer, etc. So I think that's a naturally that's a good thing. You're looking at people that have probably done a lot of the legwork that you don't want to do, and you're trying to just glean from it. But I would say that quickly after that, you have to realize that there's always going to be someone doing more, right? So like you can look at the top number one person across any metric in Canada. Well, they're probably a drop in the bucket compared to the top person in the US. And the top person in the US is probably a drop in the bucket towards the top person in the Middle East, or it goes on and on and on. And I just had a conversation with somebody recently, and it's like, if your number is more, if Wolf of Wall Street, I don't know if you remember that story,
Yeah.
but he's asked in that movie, Leo DiCaprio's asked, so what's your number, man? 100 million, 300 million, what's your number? At what point do you get out? And he just looks the guy in the eyes and he says, my number is more. And if that's who you are, then it's never going to be enough. You'll always be chasing, you'll always be running. As a favorite line of mine is like, you're content when you stop moving the goalposts. And so for me, we don't want to stop growing and stop innovating and stop developing marketing strategies. We want to do all of those things, but we also realize that we are very, very content serving the clients that we have incredibly well. And every client that comes in, we're grateful for. And we don't have to sell every single house in Ontario or grow internationally. But if we protect and look after the amazing clientele that we have, we're in good shape. And I think that actually in itself naturally grows. So like, even though the intention is not to necessarily grow at all costs, you tend to grow because your narrative or your heart in the whole matter was to actually service the people that you have really, really well. So it's easier said than done. I mean, I'm as guilty as the next at looking across the bay or looking over the next agent's kind of shoulder to say like, okay, what are you guys doing well? And even before this call, like I admired what you guys do from a CRM system standpoint. And I think that we have a lot of growth needed in the CRM space. And so I think that stuff is good, but I would tell you that I stay off of social media. Social media is a great example of, you go on for 5 minutes, you're either going to feel better than or less than. You're going to feel like, wow, I'm so great compared to this person, or, oh, wow, this person's so much better than me. And that's just a terrible way to spend 5 minutes. So for us, and I recommend this to my teammates as well, obviously we're going to put real estate content on social media as well as market our listings, etc. But in terms of like watching people and because what are we doing on social media? We're basically telling everybody how great we are in the greatest aspects of our business. We're not going to jump on social media and be like, I really suck at this. I really could get better at that. And so we're not actually being completely authentic with regards to those channels. And so I'm very, very careful to kind of guard the mind and stay focused on serving the agents, the client pool, and the geography that we do business in, with kind of hearing some of the noise, but not getting caught up in all of it.
I think that's super wise because one of my agents the other day put out a video and it reminded me of a law from one of our courses, Bold. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. And that one's always stuck with me. We are always constantly comparing ourselves to other people, and it does take up a lot of mind share. So you have to be determinate of what you want to choose to spend your mind share on. Is it social media and comparing yourself to people, or is it focusing on living your life and being present in the moment?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's such a, and it's easy to talk about it, Anna, and you're right, exactly what you say. I find to put it into practice is the challenge, and you kind of have to fight against the culture in some ways. For me, that means that like personally, I'm not going to be involved in social media personally. Like I'm not going to be on channels looking at other people's stuff personally. I'm not going to have a personal channel. With regards to branding and advertising our clients' houses, of course, we need to get the boosts, paid advertising, and also just posts on the shorts and the reels out for them. But as well as I do, sometimes you'll be on your team site or your team channel, and all of a sudden you're scrolling down, looking at other things, and it's like, oh, these guys are doing that, or oh, we should be doing this maybe. And that's a never ending rat hole. Like there's just a million things that you could be doing. And I think that there's danger in that. There's danger in raising the next generation that way, because what if your channel doesn't have thousands of followers? What if your channel doesn't have millions of impressions? Does that mean you failed? Does that mean you stink? I don't think so. I just think that there's some safeguards that need to be put into place, specifically in the real estate industry, right? Because it's an industry saturated with marketing, and you can watch somebody's clip for 20 seconds and they can make you think that they are bringing in millions and millions of dollars a year, when really they're like two payments away from bankruptcy on their employee salaries. So there's a lot of noise, and I choose to follow people that have a very similar worldview. At Keller Williams, you guys have a motto. I don't know if they still have it up on the wall, but it used to be God, family, work, in that order. That's how they would say it. It would be right up on the wall in a Keller Williams office. And for me, that matches up, right? So like, I'm gonna sort of center in on my faith, then on my family, and of course, I'm gonna focus on work. But it's gonna be done in that order, always in that order. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that.
Well, Scott, it's been awesome to spend some time with you today and learn about the authentic version of yourself and what you're doing to build your business. And we're so grateful to spend time. And I know we're going to have to connect after this and keep masterminding a little bit more. But as we wrap up today, we have one final question for you that we ask all of our guests. And that's, who do you know that we should know that should be on Sales Beast podcast?
You know what? Just because Mike's got the junior hockey background, I would say he's a friend, certainly a colleague in the industry, and hopefully he would say a friend as well. But Mark Ferris would probably be the next guy to connect with, because Mark's done incredibly well. He's doing some great things in multifamily right now, specifically down in Florida, and obviously built a big brand in Barrie and the surrounding. But he came from kind of that aspiring NHL career and went into real estate with the same competitive spirit. But yeah, I'd sort of nod towards Mark Ferris. He can play this for him, and he'd be a great guest on your podcast.
That's a great recommendation. I don't think anyone shouted him out yet. So
all right.
Yeah,
sometimes we forget about these incredible salespeople that are just outside the corridor, but yeah, he's doing great things.
Great. Well, thanks again so much for hopping on the podcast with us today, and we hope to chat with you again soon. Any final words for our listeners?
I would just say thank you guys for what you guys are doing and putting the effort in and the time in and the resources in to providing value. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Every day I'm hustling. Every day I'm hustling. Every day I'm hustling. Every day